NPR and PBS defend work as Republicans consider cuts. A story that the Center Square's Casey Harper put together, and we'll talk about it now. As we've also got the White House having to react to a story about alleged leaked military secrets before the U.S. attacked Houthis in Yemen. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop here with the Center Square. And of course, we focus on Illinois quite a bit, but you can't not watch what's going on over in Washington, D.C. And it also is something that is regularly impacting Illinois. We'll have a separate segment on the elections executive order that President Donald Trump signed earlier this week. But let's take a look at what some of the happenings were in Washington, D.C. yesterday. So if you go to thecentersquare.com, obviously, if you sign up for the newsletter, you'll get this in your inbox. But go check it out. As you can see here, Marjorie Taylor Greene, a Republican congresswoman from Georgia, leading this effort, and it's part of the House Delivering on Government Efficiency subcommittee. All right, so it's not the Department of Government Efficiency, it's Delivering on Government Efficiency for the committee, and of course that spells Doge. The hearing comes as the Department of Government Efficiency has hacked away at various parts of the federal government and criticism of the left-leaning national coverage of PBS and NPR, as well as some of the transgenderism coverage. It's all drawn criticism. So you have the chair of this committee, Marjorie Taylor Greene. She had several moments that captured people's attention yesterday, and here's just one of them where she lays out her criticisms of what NPR and PBS are doing on their broadcasts.
Specifically, as a mother, if I had walked in my living room or one of my children's bedrooms and seen this child predator and this monster targeting my children, I would become unglued. And that is how most parents feel all over this country. This is not the only example of them sexualizing and grooming children. They've been doing it for over the last decade. In 2015, PBS produced Frontline put out a documentary, Growing Up Trans, that takes viewers on an intimate and eye-opening journey inside the struggles and choices facing transgender kids and their families. This means that PBS is one of the founders of the trans child abuse industry, all while taking taxpayer money.
So she went on from there to continue railing against that and highlighting what she says was left-leaning bias from PBS and NPR in particular. She even went on further to share her concerns.
NPR journalists were to ask everyone they interviewed their race, gender, and ethnicity, and enter it into a centralized tracking system. This tracking system embeds DEI into the fibers of its content. Sounds like racism to me. It's a software attached to NPR's content management system where these reporters and producers submit information about their sources' race and ethnicity, gender identity, geographic location, that's kind of scary, and age range. The tool allows NPR to track the demographics of their sources in real time to allow for source diversity. The irony of these supposed diverse sources is that NPR has no real interest in diversity, like having diverse viewpoints. Berliner tried to sound the alarm on this when he checked voter registration records of the editors at DC's NPR headquarters and found 87 registered Democrats and 0 registered Republicans. But NPR treated Berliner like a political dissident in the old Soviet Union. He was driven out of the organization and forced to resign. Sounds like communism. And the ringleader of that effort was NPR's then newly appointed CEO, Catherine Marr, who is before us today. She dismissed Mr. Berliner's wake-up call as profoundly disrespectful, hurtful, and demeaning. In other words, instead of viewing it as a chance to finally right the ship at NPR, she doubled down. In doing so, she made it clear how any further internal dissent would be dealt with on her watch. That does sound like communist China.
So Green obviously highlighting some of the things they've heard from whistleblowers at PBS and NPR, saying that everybody on staff was a Democrat. Jim Jordan also had a chance to question the NPR CEO, Catherine Mayer, about that. And here's just a little clip of that part of the hearing.
Over the last 5 years, went up, down, or stayed the same?
It has gone up and down and is now going back up.
Well, I thought 5 years ago it was at 60 million. And you said in your opening statement, I think 43 million.
That's correct.
So 43 million now, and it was at 60 million 5 years ago. I can do some math. That looks like it went down.
And is now going back up.
It's now going back up?
Yes, it is.
How much has it went back up?
It's gone up a couple of millions over the past years.
Oh, so you went from 60 million to 41 million. Now you're back up to 43 million.
In a year's time, I'm very proud of that growth, sir.
Okay, you're proud of that growth. Okay. But over 5 years, it's went down 18 million.
That is correct, sir.
Okay. Should taxpayers subsidize NPR?
I believe that taxpayers subsidize local stations, sir. That is the vast majority of where
I thought you said you got 11 million from Corporation of Public Broadcasting, which is taxpayer funded directly to you, right?
That is to support the public
and
radio
then local
satellite
stations
system.
get it from the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, right? They get taxpayer
100
money.
million that goes to the local
100 million goes to
yes.
local stations, and then those local stations buy back programming and content from you. So that money goes to the local stations, comes back to you, gets routed through the local stations, all taxpayer money.
Those fees are actually based on private donations rather than on federal funding.
Well, we all know money's fungible, so some of it gets put in there.
Certainly, we could agree that money is fungible.
What? More money for less listeners. You fired the guy who pointed all this out, who said that you were so biased to the left that you lost listeners, which is exactly happening, and you're here maintaining that, oh, you need to continue to get taxpayer money.
I did not fire Mr. Berliner, sir.
Okay, the guy that left after all that. Understand. Are you fundraising off today's hearing?
Sir, I believe that there was a message that went out earlier today letting people know we were coming in. Yes.
Yeah, and at the bottom of the message it said, donate now, right?
I don't recall the exact
I
language.
can show it to you right there. It is, donate now. I mean, I'm not against fundraising. We all do it. I mean, I get it. But it's I assume this fundraising thing is probably going to all the left listeners who are subsidized content by the taxpayers, and that's
The
the
gentleman's
rub.
time is
That's
expired.
the rub.
So again, just some of the conversation there, right? I mean, if there's a hard political bias through NPR and PBS, should taxpayer dollars be going to that? Really, the impetus of this hearing. But there were others, Democrats in particular, who raised concerns about other things. Here is Texas Democratic U.S. Representative Greg Cesar.
Musk took over the government. Reporters noticed that the State Department was trying to funnel 400 million taxpayer dollars to Tesla. The State Department said it's an old contract, no news here. But because of a brave whistleblower and an NPR reporter, they exposed the corruption and the lies. Madam Chairwoman, if we want to look into waste, fraud, and abuse, why not look into that? Elon Musk, who's running cabinet meetings, who's running the White House, was trying to funnel money to himself. So let's stop investigating Cookie Monster and start investigating how the Trump administration lied about this and was trying to funnel money to their biggest political supporter.
And there was a lot of other kind of one-liners about let's stop trying to fire Bert and Ernie and fire Elon Musk, or, you know, the Democrats kind of had this interesting line that they were testing out during this hearing. But, you know, I guess the Democrats felt that all of the conversation about your tax dollars going to a politically biased news organization that went with the establishment narrative on COVID, went with the establishment narrative on Trump-Russia collusion, went with the establishment narrative on not really pursuing the Hunter Biden laptop story, and a whole host of other things that now we reflect on and look back and say, well, there could have been better reporting on all of those things. So obviously, the question is, should tax dollars be going to that? But the Democrats, not necessarily wanting to focus on NPR and PBS, they wanted to instead shift the conversation over to the Trump White House. And in particular, one U.S. representative from Massachusetts, Stephen Lynch, he didn't even really address the questions of political bias within a taxpayer-funded news organization like NPR. He instead focused on what a lot of other headlines are looking at, and that's the military strike against the Houthis in Yemen that an Atlantic magazine reporter somehow got onto an encrypted Signal app messaging thread with members of the Trump cabinet dealing with war. Here's Stephen Lynch.
This hearing also comes at the direction of President Trump and Elon Musk, who have repeatedly called for the defunding of all public media and claimed that media organizations such as PBS and NPR are, and I quote, a liberal disinformation machine, close quote. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is engaged in an actual disinformation campaign to minimize the catastrophic national security breach that was revealed earlier this week. As reported by Atlantic editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg, Mr. Goldberg was inadvertently added to a group chat on an unauthorized, non-secure, publicly available message app in which Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth disclosed, quote, operational details of forthcoming strikes on Yemen, including information about targets, weapons systems, and other actions the U.S. would be taking, and also attack sequencing. I want to remind my colleagues in Congress that federal law makes it a crime when a person, through gross negligence, removes information relating to national defense from its proper place of custody or delivered to anyone in violation of this trust, or to be lost, stolen, or abstracted or destroyed. And what's more, if evidence shows that any of the parties who were in on that Signal chat lied under oath in the Senate yesterday, Mr. Ratcliffe or Ms. Gabbard, for instance, then certainly conspiracy to conceal that breach would be far worse, where center or criminal intent is in evidence, and would be more likely to invite culpability and possible criminal liability.
So clearly the Democrats are looking for, heads to roll, right? They are trying to have independent investigations of this, even though the White House says that they have investigations ongoing, and Trump has been asked about this multiple times, and even the White House press secretary Catherine Leavitt yesterday, as the day before, said that this is a non-story. This individual somehow inadvertently got onto this Signal chat. They maintain that they didn't share any classified information on that Signal chat. Democrats push back and say yes, they did. But here's Catherine Leavitt yesterday.
And I think it speaks volumes about the leadership of this president that he went directly to all of you, members of the press corps. He was asked, do you want someone else to go out and do a briefing? And he said, no, I will tackle this story. I will discuss it. The people need to hear from me about this situation. And so his thoughts on this remain the same today. He has placed great trust in his national security team. And as for the usage of Signal, as the president said yesterday, as the CIA director has testified under oath, this is an approved app. It's an encrypted app. The Department of Defense, the Department of State, the CIA has it loaded onto government phones because it is the most secure and efficient way to communicate. As for, again, the original situation in this messaging thread, the National Security Council, the White House counsel's office continues to look in to how this mistake, which the National Security Advisor has owned, occurred.
From there, we'll continue to track what's going on in Washington from time to time here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning. I'm Greg Bishop, Associate Editor for Illinois. And get the headlines in your inbox with the newsletter. Go to thecentersquare.com.